having been erased from all family events by my family for fear that I would spoil the mood. I banned them from my wedding. Now they're trying to ruin my big day. My name's Noah. I'm 31. And if you told me 5 years ago that my wedding day would become the quietest, cleanest piece of payback I'd ever pull off, I would have laughed you out of the room. For as long as I remember. My family loved categories. There was Tyler. The golden child Letterman jacket. Captain of everything. The kind of smile teachers used to reference when they said, "Why can't you be more like," then Kara. The second golden child, in a different font class president. Prom photo taped to a dozen refrigerators around town. My parents. Patrick and Elaine. Wore pride like a uniform. They didn't just cheer from the stands, they curated the narrative our family. Winners since 1990-something. And then there was me. Not rebellious. Not a problem. Just different. I read at lunch. Played chess after school. And brought up space probes at dinner. I believed if I stayed polite and steady, I'd eventually be allowed into the same warm circle everyone else stood in without thinking. I should have known that in some families, different doesn't get folded in. It gets placed on a shelf and labeled nice but unnecessary. It didn't look like cruelty. That's the trick. It looked like teasing paired with thoughtful exclusions dressed up as we figured you'd be happier sitting this one out. It looked like someone at the table answering for me. Noah's not into that before I'd even opened my mouth. It looked like the way people pass a stranger on a sidewalk, a glance. A smile. And then the pivot back to their real lives. I was 22 when Kara took me to coffee on a pale gray Friday. She placed a color-coded binder on the table. All tabs and timelines. "Listen," she said. Smiling the way you smile when you're about to hand a child a smaller portion and call it generous. "I just think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. We're going for a really normal vibe. Not really your scene." You blinked. "Your scene, I'm your brother." She touched my wrist. "I'll send so many photos. You'll feel like you were there." At home. I told my parents. Dad didn't look up from the June sports section. "Bride to seed," he said. Mom added while sorting mail. "Honey, you'd be miserable. All those people you don't know." As if I hadn't grown up with half of them. She kissed my cheek in a distracted way and told me I'd thank her later. I didn't cry. I couldn't eat for 2 days because of the rock in my throat. But I didn't cry. 2 years later, a blurry photo of a banquet table lit up my phone at 1:147 p.m. Tyler in a tux. Kara throwing confetti. My parents with champagne. Caption "Family is everything." That was how I learned my brother got married. No call. No text. Nothing. Just the internet announcing that the club had met, and once again, I wasn't on the list. I heard my heartbeat in my ears and read the caption again, until the words felt like static. Mom texted the next morning. It was last minute. "You wouldn't have liked it." I typed. Deleted. Typed again. And finally sent noted. She responded with a thumbs up emoji and a photo of the cake. Incident trays, September, dose. 2018. By then, I hope had shrunk from a balloon to a string. But it was still there. Tyler moved into a new house. And I drove an hour with a $200 gift card and a foolish grin. I rang the bell 3 times. When he finally opened the door, he looked genuinely surprised. "Oh. Mom said you probably wouldn't come." "I'm here," I said, holding out the envelope. "Congrats." Inside was laughter. Smoke from the grill. Music that made the windows tremble. I recognized faces from childhood. People who used to pinch my cheek and ask about school plays they never attended. Now, they barely registered me. I tried to wedge myself into conversations. But it felt like trying to join a game mid-round, without knowing the rules. Polite smiles. The quick swivel back to their real circle. Near sunset. Kara. Wobbly with too much sangria. Called across the yard. Loud enough to turn heads. Well, at least Noah didn't ruin anything today. Must be a new record. Her friends laughed the kind of laugh people laugh when they know it's safe to. My plastic cup cracked in my hand. No one said a word in my defense. Dad inspected the grill. Mom adjusted a platter. Tyler scrolled his phone. I set the gift card on the counter and slipped out through the side gate. No scene. No speech. Just the quiet click of a door behind me and the dull thud of something inside me, locking. You'd think that would be the end. I thought it would be. Too. But hope is stubborn. And habit even more so. I kept sending texts on holidays short. Careful messages, like Happy Thanksgiving. Hope it's a good one. Sometimes Mom replied with a heart. Sometimes weeks went by and then a stray. Sorry. Busy from Kara, as if friendship were a chore she kept forgetting to complete. On December 24, 2019, I dropped off a box of maple cookies at my parents' place, $14. 99. Ribbon, and everything. I left it on the porch with a card that said, "For the dessert table." That night, Dad posted a photo of the spread. I recognized every dish. Mine wasn't there. Mom texted later. "We saved you a plate." Like a punchline told under a whisper. Still, I caught myself rehearsing conversations in the shower. If I could just say the right constellation of words, something about boundaries without sounding ungrateful. Something about wanting to belong without asking to be remade. Maybe they'd hear me. Maybe there'd be a chair next to Tyler at the next table. A place card with my name that didn't feel like a mercy. I told myself the same lie every optimistic person tells: when the evidence is stacked to the ceiling, next time will be different. I even wrote it down on a yellow sticky note on January 2, 2020, and stuck it to my fridge. Different this year. By April, the note was curled at the edges. The ink faded. I left it there anyway. A ritual of almost belief. Looking back, I can see the breadcrumb trail I kept stepping over. The way Dad's compliments for Tyler were sentences and for me were nods. The way Kara asked me for help editing her grad school essay on March 10, 2017, and then introduced me to her friends as my brother who reads a lot. Like I was a novelty item from a store she didn't shop at. The way Mom signed off phone calls with, "Take care" instead of "love you." Switching the language of family into the language of neighbors. I should have known what those small rewrites were rehearsing. What do you call it when a house never had a room for you, and you only notice because you got old enough to wonder where your suitcase is supposed to go? Here's the detail that sticks, a mustard stain memory I can't scrub out. July 4, 2016. A barbecue at the old park near the highway. Everyone was there. Even people whose last names I didn't know, but who knew the length of Tyler's touchdown. I brought a bowl of potato salad from a recipe I'd practiced twice. Mom moved it to the far end of the table. Behind the napkins. Late afternoon. A kid bumped the table and the salad slipped. It hit the grass face down. Someone said, "No harm done." No one looked at me. Later, when fireworks opened like flowers, I stood behind them all and watched their faces glow red, white, blue. I can tell you the exact shade of blue, because it matched the bowl lying in the trash can beside the grill. That's the thing about exclusion, it's not always a slammed door. Sometimes it's a steady hand guiding your contributions toward the edge, until gravity does the rest. Sometimes it's a smile paired with, "maybe next time." Until next time becomes a myth. By the time my 30s rolled in, I had learned how to be quiet in a room full of people who insisted I was too sensitive and not sensitive enough at the same time. I learned to carry a jacket to leave early without drawing attention. I learned to keep my keys in my palm when I waved goodbye so no one could ask, "You're not going already? Are you?" And then, one late summer evening, after another small gathering where I'd hovered between conversations like a ghost, trying not to startle anyone, Kara made the joke across the yard, and everyone laughed. I went home, deleted the family group chat, and slept like a person whose body finally believed what his mind had been whispering for years: they don't want you. If this were a louder story, that would be where the plates shatter and the speeches get made. But mine wasn't loud. It was the quiet kind. To the kind where a door inside you turns, and you don't even realize you've thrown away the key until someone asks you to open up again, and you can't remember where you put it. I didn't know it then. Standing in my dark kitchen, staring at the blue light of my phone. But the next chapter would rearrange everything. A list would get made. Invitations would go out. A question would arrive from a number I knew by heart: "When are you sending ours?" And I would answer with a sentence so small it could fit on a fortune slip. The truth is, the fuse was already lit. It wasn't sparking, it was smoldering. Slow and sure. All that remained was the moment someone leaned close enough to feel the heat, and insisted it was all in my head. I wish I could tell you I made a speech that night after Kara's joke. That I stood on a chair, and delivered a manifesto about dignity and boundaries. What really happened was smaller. I drove home with the windows down even though the air was sticky. Put the $200 gift card receipt in a drawer. And deleted our family group chat. The silence that followed wasn't triumphant. It was clean. I slept through the night for the first time in months. The next morning I did something even smaller. I went to the farmer's market. Bought a bag of peaches for $7. And took my time choosing them. That's how grief sometimes leaves you start noticing the weight of fruit in your hands again. 2 weeks later, on September 16, 2018, I met Lily. Not in some cinematic way, no bumping into each other with scattered books. We both got stuck in the same drizzle outside the library, and took shelter beneath the overhang. She was reading a travel guide with sticky notes blooming from the edges. And I made a joke about how the rain must be auditioning for a bigger role. She laughed. Not the polite kind, the laugh that means someone is genuinely pleased to have been surprised. We ended up splitting an umbrella to the coffee shop up the block. I learned she worked as a pediatric nurse. That she collected old postcards. That she kept a list in her phone titled Small Delights and updated it like some people refresh stock apps. Item #6, the sound sidewalk chalk makes when it scrapes the curb. Item #02, the moment a kettle begins to murmur before it whistles. I didn't tell her any family stories that day. I told her about the Mars rovers, and about the librarian who always mispronounced my last name, and pretended it was a running joke instead of a mistake. And about how I was trying to cook one good stew per season. She told me to add nutmeg. Just a whisper. When the rain let up, we stood on the edge of the awning like we were at the edge of a dock. She said. Same time next week I said yes, before I could think of reasons to be careful. Our life grew in the way ivy grows quiet. Sure. Unstoppable once it finds brick. We traded books. Then keys. We started a rule about phones face down during dinner. No exceptions. On January 3, 2019, she found my curled yellow sticky note on the fridge, different this year. She peeled it free. Smoothed it out. And stuck it to her own fridge next to a recipe for lemon bars. Let's give that sentence a fighting chance. She said. There were no grand declarations. Just 1,000 small proofs. When I forgot where I left my wallet. She didn't tease. She walked the room with me. Retraced our steps. And put it in my hand like we'd solved a puzzle together. When she had a double shift and her feet ached. I ran warm water in a basin, and held her ankles as if they were a precious thing I'd been trusted to guard. On March 29, we bought a second-hand bookshelf for $40 and argued softly. Happily about whether poetry belonged above or below essays. She said above. I ceded the space and claimed the bottom row for atlases. I told her about my family slowly. Like easing weight onto a healing ankle. She didn't jump to advice. She asked questions that made room instead of corners. When did it first feel like you were outside looking in? What's one moment you wish someone had stepped between you and the joke? I gave her a date and a scene and felt the strangest mix of sadness and relief when she reached across the table and said, You weren't imagining it. On February 14, 2020, we ate takeout on the living room floor, and I asked Lily if she wanted to marry me. Not a surprise with fireworks. More like a truth finally spoken out loud. She nodded before I finished the sentence. We set a date, September 12. 2020. Small ceremony. Even smaller reception. We made a spreadsheet because love needs logistics. 2. Deposits stacked up in neat columns. Venue, hold $1. Lambe. Photographer retainer, $600. Catering minimum, $2. Lambe. We set the guest list guideline at 50 people. Which felt both generous and sane. One Saturday in May, we spread index cards across the dining table and wrote names in blue ink. Chosen family. Lily said. And the words landed like a soft, heavy blanket. Then she asked the question I knew was coming and had tried to outrun. Do you want to invite your family? I counted the window panes before I answered. I've thought about it. I said. Which was true. I had imagined the olive branch. The warm reunion by the appetizer table. The collective decision to behave. Then I remembered Kara's binder. Tyler's caption. The way my mother moved my bowl to the edge of the table years ago. I remembered the heat in my cheeks when laughter rolled away from me like surf. No. I said. I don't. She nodded once. Nothing dramatic. Okay. Then we won't. She slid the stack of blank index cards closer. We'll write down the names of people who show up for us. We sent digital invitations on June Kind's crisp designs. The RSVP button, a small, cheerful rectangle. Within 48 hours, 37 people said yes with exclamation points and parenthetical notes about babysitters and meal preferences. A handful of no's arrived with apologies that felt like hugs. Not rejections. I took screenshots of the yes column before bed like a teenager saving a crush's texts. The first ripple from my family arrived exactly 1 week later. A text from mom at 8:02 a.m. Heard you're getting married. When are you sending our invites? No congratulations. No question mark after congratulations. Even by accident. Just the assumption of a world where the past is a smudge you can wipe off with a napkin. I stared at the message longer than it took to craft my reply. Lily was buttering toast in the kitchen. She didn't say. What are you going to write? She said. Do you want more honey? I did. I ate the toast. Then I typed, there isn't an invitation. I sat with that small, Accurate sentence for a full minute before I pressed send. The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared. Don't be dramatic. Mom wrote. We're your parents. We deserve to be there. The word deserve scratched across the screen. I put my phone face down and washed the plate. It buzzed again. Dad, we'll talk about this on Sunday. Kara, a single eye roll emoji, and then. Grow up. Noah. Tyler, nothing at first. Then a link to a tuxedo rental site with the note. Pick mine if you want. I'll match your colors. As if inclusion were a costume he could put on for an afternoon. I didn't reply. Lily didn't ask me to. She set her hand on my back. That steady touch people learn in a hospital where the hours are long and the stakes are real. We'll keep planning. She said. You and me. Small towns have efficient channels. Within days. Kara posted a captionless photo of a champagne glass and a table setting on July 2. Comments multiplied like ivy. Someone wrote. Can't wait for your brother's big day. Kara answered. Some people forget where they come from. No names. Just the familiar theater of indirect accusation. Friends from college texted to ask if I'd seen it. I said yes. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and learned how to fold pocket squares on YouTube. Avoiding videos that promised drama and sticking to ones that discussed angles and patience. That became my posture, angles and patience. The private messages came next. Mom alternated between the language of guilt and the language of ownership. Family should stick together. Then we're still your legal family. The second one made me laugh in a way that wasn't amused. I forwarded it to Lily, who replied with a single line, legal isn't the same as loyal. Tyler sent a longer note late on July 9. Past midnight. You're making a mistake. Dad's not sleeping. Mom's crying. Invite us, and we'll forget this. I stared at forget until it blurred. I typed and deleted a dozen versions of, I'm not asking you to remember. I'm asking you to stop rewriting. I sent nothing. We ordered 48 chairs. We met the florist in a studio that smelled like soil and sweet stems and circled dahlias on a chart. We adjusted the budget after a catering change added $350. Lily's friend Maya built a playlist that moved like a coastline, gentle. Then bright. Then calm again. Every now and then I felt the old tug call them. Smooth it over. Make it easier. Then I'd open our spreadsheet and see the notes Lily had added in the margin. Aunt Maris neighbors since 2010 brings lemon pound cake. Hugs, like a folding chair, clicking open. Mr. Alvarez from the hardware store always cuts spare keys just in case. Asked me to tell you he's proud. June coworker sat with me in the ER family room when that kid needed 3 IV attempts. She said, tell Noah I'll cry in the back row. Every name was a thread that held. I looked at the list of people who were coming without conditions. And the urge to negotiate with the past loosened its grip. Late one night in August, I drafted a letter I never intended to send. It started. You had so many chances to choose me. And you didn't. It listed dates out of order, like memories do. June 2013. August 2015. September 2018. It ended with a sentence so simple it almost sounded childish. This is my wedding. I get to feel safe. I closed the document without saving it. I didn't need to deliver it to make it true. A week before the wedding, Lily and I practiced our walk down the aisle in the living room, navigating the coffee table like it was an inconvenient guest. We laughed when we bumped shoulders. I felt the kind of relief that makes your eyes sting. We went to bed early. At 6:11 a.m. The next morning, my phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number that wasn't unknown at all. It was Mom's friend borrowing a different phone. They just want to talk. Let them come by. 10 minutes. I didn't answer. I made oatmeal. I ironed my shirt. The day didn't dim. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was how the calm we'd built would be tested. How quickly a quiet boundary can become a siren if someone decides a no is an invitation to push harder. All I knew was this: the invitations had gone out. The chairs were set. The list held firm. I had chosen a family that chose me back. And somewhere else in town, the people who used to say you wouldn't enjoy it anyway were composing speeches about forgiveness. They were practicing their most reasonable voices. They were deciding that history was negotiable if you spoke with enough certainty. I thought the story would pause there until the ceremony. I thought the next chapter would begin with vows and a vineyard sunset. Instead, the next chapter began with a knock that didn't sound like a knock. And the single call that pulled everything into focus. The morning of September 12, the sky looked washed and brand new. As if someone had rinsed the world overnight. The venue, a small vineyard outside town, smelled like earth and late summer. Rows of simple white chairs. A string quartet that doubled as a playlist from Lily's friend Maya when the bow arms got tired. A welcome table with lemons in a glass bowl, because Lily said, "Citrus looks like optimism." I kept waiting for my hands to shake. They didn't. A calm had settled over me that I didn't trust at first. Then decided to accept like a loan I fully intended to pay back with interest. Tyler wasn't there. Kara wasn't there. My parents weren't there. The chair count still reached 48. Guests began to arrive in little clusters. Mr. Alvarez from the hardware store. Tie slightly crooked and proud, as if he were escorting a parade. June from Lily's unit. Eyes already shining. Aunt Maris. Who isn't my aunt, except in every way that counts. Carrying a lemon pound cake, wrapped in a clean dish towel. Each hello tightened the weave under my feet. When the quartet started, the first few bars of the processional, the air held still. Then Lily appeared. And the stillness split like a curtain. She didn't float. She walked. One steady step after another. A person coming into a room she had spent months preparing with care. I could feel the exact moment I stopped bracing for something to go wrong. It was like realizing you've been clenching your jaw for years and then letting it go. We promised ordinary things, dishes. Patience. The long boring parts that make the bright parts possible. My voice didn't crack until I said, "You make my life feel like a room with enough chairs." She squeezed my fingers hard enough to make sure the sentence registered in my bones. When the officiant said the words that close one chapter and open another, there was no thunder. There was applause that sounded like rain on a roof you trust. We had decided to keep our phones away in a basket by the guest book. After the ceremony, while people drifted toward the patio, Mr. Whitaker, our wiry next-door neighbor who seems to run on coffee and goodwill, intercepted me with a grin he tried and failed to suppress. "You'll want to see this," he said, lowering his voice the way people do when they bring you news you didn't ask for but suddenly need. He led me to a small circle near the arbor, where 3 guests were huddled around a phone. "We wouldn't show you," Maya said. Except it's already everywhere." I braced. Then nodded. The screen glowed with a social media feed I knew too well. Kara's name at the top of a post. "Can't believe my own brother would cut family out of his wedding after everything we've done for him. Some people just don't understand loyalty." A few lines below. Of a comment from someone I remembered from school. "Didn't you leave him out of yours?" Under that a heap of defensive replies from Kara's small choir. Another swipe Tyler had written. "Guess Noah forgot who helped raise him. Hope he enjoys being alone when the party's over." The first comment under it was surgical. "Didn't invite him to yours." Right, looks like balance to me. A second comment simply said, "Yikes." A third swipe, Mom Elaine had posted an old picture from a birthday in our kitchen balloons. An ice cream cake. Kara in the foreground with frosting on her nose. Caption, "Some people forget who loved them first." The phrasing planted itself in my throat like a dry cracker. I didn't feel the old rush of heat in my cheeks. I felt a clarity that was almost cool. Lily came up beside me and didn't ask what it was. She looked, squeezed my arm, and said, "We're here." "They're not." It wasn't unkind, it was precise. You can spend your whole life getting baited into rooms where the conversation is rigged. I didn't walk into that room. I didn't comment. Didn't text. I didn't send a single screenshot to anyone but Lily. Instead, we moved toward the patio where glasses were clinking, where Aunt Maris was cutting the pound cake with the smooth confidence of someone who has done hard things and learned how to make them look easy. During toasts, June stood with her paper in hand and said, "I've watched Lily choose people every day at work. Today I watched her be chosen back." She blinked fast and smiled at me like we were in on the same secret. We were. We danced under string lights that made everyone look 10% kinder. The cake leaned a little. And the playlist hiccuped twice. And Mr. Alvarez made a speech longer than anyone expected because he'd written it on index cards and wanted to honor the effort. It all felt human. Which is to say, perfect. Every so often, someone would tug me aside to whisper, "Ignore the posts. Do you want me to report them? Do you want me to say something?" I thanked them. Then redirected us back to the party we were actually at. The real world where flowers needed water and people needed seconds of pasta salad, and Lily's hair kept finding my shoulder like a bird coming home. When we finally slipped away in a shower of sparklers and laughter, I didn't check my phone. We drove to a rented cabin not far from the vineyard. The kind with a porch that looks out over a fold of hills and a couch that has seen college kids and families and a dozen variations of celebration. We opened a cheap bottle of champagne and drank it from mismatched mugs because the cabinet offered no flutes and we didn't need them. At 6:32 a.m., my phone vibrated across the nightstand and thumped to the floor. I picked it up and saw a stack of missed calls. Dad, Mom, Kara, Tyler, and 3 voicemails. I pressed play on the first, then held the phone away from my ear and listened on speaker while Lily poured coffee. Mom's voice, flat under an attempt at calm. Noah, call me back immediately. You're making a big mistake. You can't erase your family. You'll see. No one will ever love you like we do. The words landed without sticking. The second message was, Kara, congratulations on your little party. Hope the attention was worth it. The third was Tyler. An exhale. Then you'll come back. You always do. I deleted all 3. Not with anger. With the same steadiness you use to recycle junk mail, a decision. Then a movement. We spent the next 2 days in a bubble, deliberately inflated with small, beautiful things. Lily beat me at cards and celebrated like a champion. We found a diner with a chalkboard menu and a waitress who called everyone Han as if it were a title. And we left a tip that felt like a thank you for the whole weekend. We took a walk where most of the path was cracked and overrun with roots and didn't mind. Peace is not fancy, it's room to breathe. Back in town. The social media storm kept spinning without us. Friends sent Samarius. I didn't read. My phone stayed on Do Not Disturb. A setting I now equal with sleep and hydration, basic maintenance that used to feel luxurious and now felt necessary. A few days in, the tone shifted. Mom's text softened to a script about togetherness. Family should stick together. We're still your parents. Not a single apology. Not one direct acknowledgement. Dad sent an email, a rare novelty, short and blunt. We're still your legal family. Don't think you can erase that. I laughed. But not because it was funny. I laughed the way people laugh when they recognize an old trick in a new costume. I didn't answer. I watered the basil. I sent thank you notes. I learned the names of 3 different kinds of dahlias, because the florist had written them on our invoice, and I didn't want them to just be flowers. And then came Wednesday. It was mid-morning. I was finishing a report on my laptop. Lily was in the kitchen humming along to a playlist that had slid from soul to soft rock. The knock at the door was not neighborly. It was urgent. Precise. A tempo that announces, we're not leaving. Lily froze. Spatula hovering. Expecting anyone. I wasn't. A weight settled in my stomach that I recognized from old family dinners, the premonition that a casual conversation was about to twist. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There they were on the porch like a posed photograph, Elaine holding a casserole dish as if she were auditioning for kindness. Patrick standing stiff with his jaw set. Kara in sunglasses despite the shade. Tyler scrolling his phone like he was bored with the scene. Like this was a commercial break in a show about him. I didn't open the door. I slid the window up 2 inches. Hi. Sweetheart. Mom chirped. Her voice sugared and sharp. We thought we'd stop by and talk. You know, as a family. No thanks. I said. We're busy. A beat. Dad stepped closer. Enough. He said. Not loud. But full of the old certainty. We're not leaving until you come out here and talk to us. Lily appeared behind me. Fingers slipping into mine. They're not going to leave. Are they? She whispered. No. I said quietly. They're not. Mom's smile wavered. Then vanished. She set the casserole on the railing with a clunk. This isn't you. Noah. You're not this cold. She added. With a glance toward Lily's silhouette. She's turning you against us. I opened the window another inch. Nobody turned me. You did that all on your own. Kara's mouth tightened. Tyler glanced up for the first time. Grow up. Man. He said. The words falling lazy and practiced. You're throwing away your real family over hurt feelings. It should have hooked me. It didn't. I took a breath. Felt Lily's hand tremble and hold anyway. And said. You didn't want me at your weddings. You didn't want me at holidays. You don't get to want me now because it makes a good story. Mom's eyes went hard. You'll regret this. She hissed. You will. I gave her a smile I didn't know I had in me. I already have what I need. I closed the window. Not a slam. A decisión? For a heartbeat? There was silence. Then the pounding began, fists on wood. A shove that made the frame stutter. Someone muttered a curse. Someone else said my name like a warning. Lily pulled me toward the kitchen. Should we call the police? She asked. Voice steady with a thread of fear. I listened to the thud of another hard shoulder against the door. Felt the old panic rise, and then pass like a wave that doesn't break. And realized I had reached the part of my life where action beat explanation. I picked up the phone. I'm making one call. I said, meeting Lily's eyes. And that's it. She nodded. Do it. I dialed. On the other side of the door, the banging paused for a breath and then redoubled, as if volume could turn no into yes. In my ear, a dispatcher answered, calm as a metronome. I gave our address. I said, my family is attempting to force entry. I heard my own voice and believed it. Officers are on the way. She said, the sirens would arrive soon. The porch tableau would rearrange into innocence. Explanations would be tried. Then revised. Then dropped. What I didn't know yet but would learn in the next hour was how liberating it feels to let someone else confirm what you've been told to deny. How powerful it is to stop narrating your own harm and simply document it. Outside, the pounding stopped. Inside, I set the phone down and stood between the door and the woman I had married 3 days earlier. We waited. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't rehearsing a speech. I was holding a boundary. The sirens started as a rumor in the distance. The kind of sound you can mistake for wind until it resolves into certainty. Outside, the pounding on the door stopped, like someone hit pause. Through the peephole, I watched the porch rearrange itself. Elaine lifted the casserole off the railing as if props could rewrite the scene. Patrick put his hands on his hips and inhaled like a man bracing for a heavy lift. Tyler slid his phone into his pocket and tried on a frown that said inconvenience. Kara adjusted her sunglasses even though a cloud had just moved across the sun. 2 officers rolled up. 1 woman. 1 man, tires crunching our gravel like ice. Their posture wasn't dramatic. It was practiced a calm that belongs to people who walk into other people's worst days and have to keep their hands steady. I opened the door and stepped onto the top stair with my palms visible. Morning, I said. Voice surprisingly even. Thanks for coming. The female officer nodded once. We got a report of a disturbance. Can you tell me what's going on? Before I could answer, Elaine surged forward. The casserole balanced like an offering. Officer. Thank goodness, she said. Voice sweetened to the edge of brittle. We're just trying to see our son. He's been influenced. She flicked her eyes toward the living room where Lily hovered. Visible through the window. We're family. The officer didn't look at the casserole. Ma'am, were you attempting to enter the home without permission? We knocked, Elaine said. He wouldn't open the door. He's not himself. Patrick stepped in. Chin up. We have a right to be here. He's our son. The male officer took out a small notebook like a stage cue. That's not how rights work. Seer. He's an adult. If he's asked you to leave and you refuse, that's trespassing. If you attempt to force entry, that's a separate issue. The porch air changed temperature. I felt it. So did they. The sirens started as a rumor in the distance. The kind of sound you can mistake for wind until it resolves into certainty. Outside, the pounding on the door stopped, like someone hit pause. Through the peephole, I watched the porch rearrange itself. Elaine lifted the casserole off the railing as if props could rewrite the scene. Patrick put his hands on his hips and inhaled like a man bracing for a heavy lift. Tyler slid his phone into his pocket and tried on a frown that said inconvenience. Kara adjusted her sunglasses even though a cloud had just moved across the sun. 2 officers rolled up. 1 woman. 1 man, tires crunching our gravel like ice. Their posture wasn't dramatic. It was practiced a calm that belongs to people who walk into other people's worst days and have to keep their hands steady. I opened the door and stepped onto the top stair with my palms visible. Morning, I said. Voice surprisingly even. Thanks for coming. The female officer nodded once. We got a report of a disturbance. Can you tell me what's going on? Before I could answer, Elaine surged forward. The casserole balanced like an offering. Officer. Thank goodness, she said. Voice sweetened to the edge of brittle. We're just trying to see our son. He's been influenced. She flicked her eyes toward the living room where Lily hovered. Visible through the window. We're family. The officer didn't look at the casserole. Ma'am, were you attempting to enter the home without permission? We knocked, Elaine said. He wouldn't open the door. He's not himself. Patrick stepped in. Chin up. We have a right to be here. He's our son. The male officer took out a small notebook like a stage cue. That's not how rights work. Isir? He's an adult. If he's asked you to leave and you refuse, that's trespassing. If you attempt to force entry, that's a separate issue. The porch air changed temperature. I felt it. So did they. They split us into 2 conversations, the officer's standard choreography. The female officer turned to me. Do you want to tell me what happened? Behind her. The casserole steamed under its foil. Sweat beaded on the lid and ran toward the edge. A little river with nowhere to go. I kept it simple. My family came uninvited. When I declined to let them in, they began pounding on the door and trying the handle. We felt threatened. I called. She scanned the doorframe. Mind if I take a look? There were fresh marks where the wood had shuddered under the hits. She photographed them with her phone, like evidence of weather after a storm. Anyone else inside? She asked. My wife. I said. She's in the kitchen. From the yard. I heard the male officer's steady voice. Sir. Ma'am. You need to step down off the porch. Patrick started to argue. The officer didn't raise his voice. Step down. Please. The female officer's tone softened by a degree. What outcome are you seeking? It wasn't a trick question. It was the question I'd avoided answering for years because answering it would require admitting the extent of the damage. I want them to leave. I said. I want a record. And I want to file for a restraining order. The officer didn't blink. Okay. She wrote something that looked like permission disguised as ink. Do you want to press charges for attempted forced entry and trespass? The word press landed with unexpected relief. The years of being told I was imagining things loosened another notch. Yes. I said. I do. Elaine tried again. This time directly to the female officer. He doesn't mean that. He's always been sensitive. He gets overwhelmed. She aimed a smile at me. And the same one she used to deploy when she moved my dish to the far end of the buffet table and called it help. Sweetheart. We can fix this. 10 minutes. That's all we're asking. The officer looked from her to me and back again. Ma'am. Your son has been clear. This isn't negotiable. Kara finally took off her sunglasses. Noah. She said. Tone practiced for sympathy. We just want to talk. People fight. Families argue. You don't call the police on your own. People who love you don't pound on your door. I said. My voice didn't flare. It cooled. People who love you knock and leave when you say no. Tyler tried a different tack. The one he has always used, when a room doesn't move the way he wants, casual dismissal. Are you serious right now? Over hurt feelings? He gestured toward the living room window where Lily had stepped back out of view. Since when do you make federal cases out of? The male officer's hand rose just enough to interrupt. Enough. He said. This conversation is over. You've been warned. If you return to this property without invitation, you will be arrested. Patrick took a step forward. Then thought better of it when the officer didn't budge. For the first time, I watched my father take stock of a boundary he couldn't bulldoze. The next stretch was all structure, the choreography of consequence. The officers took my statement and Lily's. Separately. Lily spoke clearly. Her hands folded. The picture of a person who shows up for emergencies and knows how to hand the truth over cleanly. The neighbor across the street, Mrs. Chung, came out to sweep her steps and casually mentioned that she had heard the banging and was glad someone was finally calling it what it was. She gave her name without being asked. Then returned to her broom, like a witness in a well-directed play. The officers asked about history. I gave dates and summaries. Not to win sympathy but to lay down a trail I wished I'd been laying all along. The female officer nodded at the detail. Not indulgent. Just attentive. These patterns matter. She said. Almost to herself. Then handed me a card with a case number. Elaine tried one more time. Last-ditch sincerity. Noah. Honey. We love you. The word sounded like a key pressed against the wrong lock. I believe you love the version of me who doesn't ask you to stop. I said. That's not me anymore. The officers turned to my family as a unit. You need to leave now. The female officer said. If you return, you will be arrested. The homeowner will be filing for a restraining order. You will be served. Do you understand? Patrick's silence was the first honest thing he'd given me all morning. Kara tucked her sunglasses into her bag with jerky precision. Tyler muttered something I couldn't hear. The male officer heard it and said, Don't. Elaine set the casserole back on the railing. I watched a drop of condensation travel the length of the foil and fall, darkening the wood. She looked at me as if we were alone. This isn't you, she said softly. Almost pleading. It is. I said. It finally is. They walked to the car like extras exiting a set after the director has called cut, trying to preserve a little dignity, while knowing the scene wasn't theirs to shape. The squad car idled until they pulled away. Then the officers turned back to us. The female officer's voice shifted into aftercare. You did the right thing, she said. Not in the shouldn't have to say it way, but in the precise way, a professional names cause and effect. Here's what happens next. We spent the afternoon doing the kind of errands you don't picture when you imagine adulthood. I filled out a report at the station. The desk sergeant walked me through the forms as if he were discussing a recipe ingredients. Steps. Timing. We asked about a protection order. He gave us a packet with yellow highlighted boxes and a list of available court times. At home. Lily made tea we didn't drink while I typed an affidavit. I wrote in the same way I had spoken to the officer dates. Quotes. Actions. Not conclusions. June Kators. 2013 told not to attend sister's wedding. Not your scene. August 8. 2015 discovered brother's wedding via photo captioned, family is everything. September 2. 2018 housewarming. Public joke at my expense record, he didn't ruin anything. September 16. 2018 ceased group contact. June 20. 2020 onward messages, alternating between guilt and entitlement. September 16. 2020, attempted forced entry. I included the photo of the doorframe marks. I attached the officer's card. The case number. The names of witnesses. When I finished, Lily read it once and said, "It's clear." She didn't add. And it's sad. We were past the chapter where sad gets to set the weather. The next day, a judge issued a temporary order, no contact. No approach within a set distance. No third-party messages. It will be served. The clerk said. The passive voice here, a kindness. I didn't need to know who handed the envelope to whom on which porch. Silence has different flavors. There's the silence you cultivate, the kind that comes after you shut off notifications and close your door. And there's the silence that follows consequence heavier. Stranger. Like fog that refuses to burn off at noon. For a few days, there was nothing from them at all. No posts. No calls from borrowed numbers. No staged appeals through family friends. The absence felt complicated and good. Like learning to enjoy decaf for the calm, more than the kick. We told a short version of the story to the people who needed to know. Mr. Alvarez came by with a new door chain and refused payment. Aunt Maris left a note stuck under a magnet, shaped like a lemon, proud of you for locking what needed locking. Lily and I ate cereal for dinner on the couch, and didn't talk about what ifs. The world didn't tilt. It steadied. 3 days after the order was served, a text came from an unknown number that wasn't unknown. We didn't mean for it to go that far. Call us. We're hurting. It was signed with Elaine's middle initial. The way she signs holiday cards when she wants to appear formal. I read it once. Lily read my face. What do you want to do? She asked. Nothing. I said. I saved the message to a folder the officer had told me to create. Documentation isn't vengeance. It's a map you make for the next time someone insists you're lost. That evening, we walked our street at sunset. The light was the color of old paper. A kid on a bike shot past with a paper streamer tied to the handlebar. Somewhere, someone was grilling. The air smelled like pepper and hope. We held hands and counted porch cats. Ordinary happiness took up more room than fear. Looking back, people sometimes assume the call that ended it all was a speech. A confrontation. A clever line that finally cut through years of fog. It wasn't. It was a very specific phone call on a Wednesday morning. It lasted less than a minute. I gave my address and a description and asked for help. Help arrived. It separated the claims from the facts. It put ink where there had only been impressions. That was the end, they mean when they say, ended it all. Not the end of history. Not the end of grief. But the end of a kind of access. The end of people walking into my life, like it was a room without a doorbell. The end of me trying to negotiate what should have been non-negotiable. After. The house sounded different. Not louder, just true. The floorboards creaked in the same places. But the creak no longer announced my own uncertainty. I slept. Lily's breathing evened out sooner. When our neighbor's wind chimes caught a breeze at 3 a.m. I didn't get up to check the locks. I already knew they were set. In the days that followed, the world didn't throw confetti. It gave us something better, normal. We made a grocery list that didn't include crisis snacks. I fixed the crooked cabinet hinge I'd been ignoring for months. Lily planted basil and mint in a window box and labeled them with popsicle sticks. We wrote thank you notes to the officers by name. The case would move in its slow, procedural way. Papers would be stamped. Dates would be set. If they broke the order, there would be consequences. If they didn't, there would be distance. Both outcomes were better than the hallway we'd lived in before. A space with no doors and no dignity. I don't pretend the past stopped knocking in my head. It still tried on some mornings. But there's a difference between memory and access. One you can coexist with. The other you can call by its name and close the door on. That's what the one call gave me. Not a victory lap. A handle. A latch that worked from the inside. Lily and I stood at the kitchen window the next Sunday and watched a finch balance on the edge of the birdbath we'd forgotten we owned. The water rippled in perfect circles from its tiny feet. We should refill that, she said. We should, I said. We did. The days after the paperwork felt like when a storm finally moves past and the house stops complaining. Nothing heroic. Just a new silence that didn't demand explanations. I learned the sound of our place again, the tick of the kitchen clock that runs a touch fast. The neighbor's screen door that always sighs twice. The way our hallway light hums for a second, before it finds full brightness. I had lived with all those noises before. But now they weren't competing with an internal alarm. They were just our soundtrack. Lily and I didn't celebrate with a banner. We did ordinary things, and let them matter. We wrote thank you notes at the table, one to the officers who came. One to Mrs. Chung for her witness statement. One to Mr. Alvarez for installing a sturdier chain and pretending it was nothing. I tightened loose screws on the cabinet door, I'd ignored for months. Lily put basil and mint in a window box, and labeled them with popsicle sticks like a teacher, proud of her students. Our lives didn't become magical. They became livable on purpose. Not every moment was easy. Some mornings. Memory tugged like a sleeve. I'd pour coffee and suddenly see a flash of that housewarming evening, the cracked cup in my hand. The laughter I was outside of. Or I'd be folding towels and remember how Kara's binder tabs sparkled under cafe, lighting as she told me I was the wrong fit for her wedding. The difference now was that those scenes arrived as memories. Not messages. They didn't ask me to do anything. I didn't owe them an answer. I could see them. Nod once. And set them where they belonged behind me. People ask what it feels like to follow through on a boundary that big. The truth is it's less fireworks and more architecture. The first week after the order, I slept without rehearsing arguments. The second week, I walked past our front door without checking the lock twice. By the third week, I realized I'd stopped composing messages in my head that began with, I know you didn't mean. The house in my mind was no longer a lobby. It had rooms. It had doors that closed and opened when I chose. Our circle tightened and brightened. Lily's parents, who lived a few towns over and had met me with easy warmth, started calling Sunday evenings just to hear about the new soup we were trying or which book we'd argued about. Lily's unit at the hospital organized a low-key congratulations lunch where June made a toast about showing up without needing a spotlight. Mr. Whitaker, our wiry neighbor, waved from his porch with an energy that could power the block and brought over a jar of his mysterious pickles that somehow taste like dill and sunshine. People showed up with casseroles not as currency but as care. There was one message from an unfamiliar number. Typed like a formal letter, we didn't mean for it to go that far. Call us. We're hurting. It wasn't signed. But it was. If you know what I mean. I saved it to the folder the officer told me to keep. The digital version of a file with a label in block letters. I didn't respond. Documentation isn't revenge, it's maintenance. The old me would have read it under a microscope and drafted 3 replies. Each more reasonable than the last. The current me opened the windows to let the kitchen cool while the bread baked and moved on with the day. 6 months slipped forward. A steady stride of ordinary. Winter softened into early spring. Then bent toward summer. On a Saturday in late June, Lily stood at the sink. Looked out at the little patch of grass we call a yard. And said, what if we threw a barbecue, just our people? No speeches. Just a grill, and too much lemonade. I felt it like a mile marker. Let's do it, I said. We made a list that fit on one sticky note, and then overflowed to a second. We bought a used folding table from an online listing for $25, and scrubbed it until the surface looked like it remembered its youth. Lily's parents offered to bring corn on the cob. Mr. Alvarez insisted on lending us a second cooler. June volunteered her famous potato salad, and promised, hand over heart, to guard it from any table-edge disasters. Lily planned a lemonade that tasted like sunlight and added raspberries, because she said the color would make people happy. The morning of the barbecue, I stood in the grocery aisle debating mustard types longer than anyone should. Dijon or yellow, I remembered a July years ago. The dropped bowl and the fireworks and the blue plastic buried under paper plates. This time, I picked both and smiled like I'd won something small and important. On the way home, I stopped at a thrift store and found a set of mismatched plates with little floral patterns, 8 for $12, so our guests wouldn't have to balance flimsy paper when they leaned in to laugh. The house filled up in a comfortable, staggered way. Lily's best friend Maya arrived first with a speaker and a playlist that moved from porch swing gentle to backyard dance bright. The Whitakers came with watermelon wrapped in a checkered towel. Mr. Alvarez showed up with a toolkit just in case, and ended up fixing the loose porch rail between conversations. Mrs. Chung brought scallion pancakes that disappeared faster than manners would recommend. June came late from a long shift. In scrubs and sneakers. Eyes tired and kind. And I put a plate in her hands before she could say she wasn't hungry. Lily's parents floated through the rooms like they'd always belonged there, refilling drinks and complimenting the mismatched plates. At one point I stepped back from the grill to take it in, kids chasing each other between lawn chairs. A dog politely failing at begging near the snack table. Lily at the folding table laughing with Maya so hard, she leaned into her shoulder. The lemon bowl on the counter caught the late light and threw it back in bright ovals onto the wall. I realized I wasn't waiting for anything to go wrong. There was nothing to brace against. The air felt like a room with enough chairs. Later, after the first round of burgers, I pulled the second cooler open and found a small container with a piece of tape that said, "From Aunt Maris. Einside lemon pound cake." The same recipe she'd brought to the wedding, wrapped in a towel that matched the one from that day. My throat did that sting you get when something good arrives without fanfare. I sliced pieces and passed them around like a secret. Someone started an impromptu game of charades. I made a wild guess that turned out right. And the cheer that went up was bigger than the moment deserved, and exactly what I needed. Nobody made jokes at my expense. Nobody measured my presence and found it a fraction. When I stepped away to refill the condiments, someone slid into my spot at the grill, without being asked. Like a relay handoff in a race we were running together. There was a point just before sunset, the hour that paints everything patient, when I looked around and thought, they didn't just miss a wedding. They missed this. They missed the way our lives knit themselves without them. They missed the way Lily's eyes crinkle when June says something quietly hilarious. They missed Mr. Alvarez showing me the trick to keep a porch rail from squeaking. A fix that involves a sliver of cardboard and patience. They missed the way Maya's playlist surprised us with an old song at the perfect moment, so even the shy guests sang along without looking away. For the first time, the thought didn't land with sadness. It landed with certainty. Not gloating. Not triumph, just clarity. Every no I'd said had made space for this yes. As the sky turned a layered pink, Lily slipped her hand into mine. Grease from the grill had made my fingers smell like pepper and smoke. Her palm was cool from holding a glass of lemonade. "We made a good life," she said. Voice low. Like naming it might scare it away. "We did," I said. "We really did." We stood like that for a long minute, letting the yard be the yard. A kid ran past with a paper crown from a cracker someone had popped early. Mr. Whitaker told a story about a road trip that ended with a flat tire and a pie that tasted like summer. June fell asleep for a few minutes in a lawn chair. And nobody woke her. Someone draped a blanket over her knees. It's funny how tenderness looks like nothing special when you're in it, and everything you need when you've been without it. When the last guest drifted out and the yard turned from pink to blue, Lily and I did the dishes to the metronome drip of the drying rack. We saved the last 2 slices of pound cake, wrapped them in wax paper, and wrote our names on the outside, as if we were kids taking lunches to school. I went out to the porch to blow out the citronella candle and paused. The street was quiet. The kind that isn't lonely. Down the block, a wind chime caught a thin breeze and chimed twice like a promise. Back inside, Lily leaned against the counter and asked, "Any regrets?" I thought about it the honest way. Not the defensive way. I thought about the mornings I used to stand at sinks in other houses, rehearsing ways to apologize for wanting a place at my own table. I thought about the version of me who believed that not making trouble was the same as being loved. I thought about the knock that wasn't a knock, and the call I made that ended a certain chapter for good. "No," I said. "None." Because the truth is simple enough to fit on a sticky note, and strong enough to hold up a life. Family is everything, but only if it behaves like family. If not, you build your own. You choose the people who open chairs when you arrive, who pass you the tongs without making you earn them, who save you a slice of cake and write your name on the wrapper, because they expect you to be there tomorrow. We went to bed with the windows open, and the house breathed around us. In the morning, sunlight put a thin stripe across the foot of the bed, the way it does when the season has turned the corner. I made coffee. Lily opened the back door, and the basil released that green, generous smell. The bird bath, which we finally remembered to refill, collected a sparrow. The circle spread. Perfect and ordinary. Later, as I took the trash out, I saw the little mustard jar on the table, its label peeling from the heat. And I laughed. A few years ago, a bowl slid off a table, and I watched it fall like proof that I didn't belong. Now there were 2 open mustards, and everyone used both. And nobody asked permission. That felt like the whole story folded into a condiment. I don't know what happens next in every detail. I know there will be work days and grocery runs and nights, when the sink is full, and we're too tired to care. There will be holidays that feel spacious, and some that catch me off guard. There might be a letter in a neat envelope someday. Or a message through a cousin. There might be nothing at all. Either way. The door has a latch that works from our side. If you asked me what I learned, I'd tell you this. Love doesn't ask you to erase yourself to qualify. Respect isn't a prize for good behavior. Safety is not a negotiation. And peace the quiet. Steady kind arrives when you stop arguing with what happened, and start arranging your life so it can't happen again. We built that peace. We guard it. We share it with the people who help us keep it intact. And at the end of the night, when the yard is dark and the dishes are done and the wind catches the chime just right, I can hear our life answer back like a house that finally knows who lives in it. Story. 2 boyfriend controlled everything I did. So I posted online asking if I was being abusive. But he found my post because he had installed spyware on my computer. So I packed everything and left while he playing video games. Hi guys. I'm using a throwaway and avoiding names for anonymity. So I don't really know where to start. It's almost a decade of my life, and I could write about it for days. But I'll try to pick out the unimportant bits. 23 farads. I have been with my boyfriend. 28 meters. For 8 years. I know it's pretty much impossible to paint a good picture of someone through a few paragraphs of a story. Especially considering I'm mostly pointing out problem areas. But please keep in mind that he's a good person. He's loving. Gentle. Cares about me than anything. And absolutely devoted to me. But we have tangled this relationship into quite a mess. Like everyone who posts here, I have countless reasons to want to stay. But I'm having trouble taking off these rose-colored glasses. Please help me. Reddit. Backstory. When we started dating, I was going through a lot of, and he was the first guy I've ever been with. I was the one who was always compromising and always finding ways to go see him. He very rarely came to see me. And if he did, he would get irritated and complain that he shouldn't have. 2. He would ask me to come over every single night, saying he missed me and he couldn't sleep. I lived about an hour away, and I didn't even have a car. So when I'd find rides to his house, bus, friends driving me, etc., I was excited to see him. I'd get there early in the day, and instead of seeing him, I'd sit on his couch alone for hours while he played video games. It was infuriating, because I played games, too. But he always told me not to bring my console, because I could use his. He had literally 0 games for it. But I always ended up just pacing around his house, waiting for him to give me a second of his time. As bad as this sounds. And it was. He was so sweet and sincere when he would finally get done. He told me how glad he was that he could keep up with his legion and still have a girlfriend. He said although he ended up breaking up with his last 3 because of fidelity problems, they hated in gaming. I was young and stupid and caught up in being the cool girlfriend. I used to have a lot of fun going to clubs and parties and all kinds of things. I had a ton of friends. Mostly male. He would get upset if I talked to them. Even the ones I had known since I was a toddler. And he said that since he didn't talk to girls, then I shouldn't either. Little did I know. He actually was talking to a few girls all this time. He said, "I love you." 2 days into dating and proposed after a few months. I told him I wasn't ready. That I loved him. But I was too young, and I needed to get to know him better. He was different after this. Like it hurt him for me to say no. After a few months together, I'd tell him I was about to do something like walk to the grocery store since I had no car, and he would scream at me over the phone. He said I was an idiot going to get myself killed. Women can't walk alone. Especially near nighttime. I know what you're thinking. Why would I stay with S exist? Well, he had never made it seem like he was S exist before, and would deny saying it. He would say he never said any such thing, and that he was only worried about me. I'd ask why he screamed and tell him it wasn't okay to treat me like that, and he'd say, "I have never and will never yell at you." At this point, I'm already doubting my sanity. But the other 75% or so of the time, he's so incredibly sweet to me. I moved in with him about 10 months in, because my mother died, and I had nowhere else to go. I had a job, but didn't make enough to support myself. His family owned farmland in the south, and had bought him his own house. About a year into our relationship, I found out that he'd lied about every single thing he'd told me about himself. The way I found out was the worst part. He just told me he forgot that he'd lied in the beginning, and he'd start randomly telling me things like, "I almost married my high school sweetheart. But she changed her mind last second, and my 10th or so girlfriend calls me every weekend to say she wants to." This is after telling me that he's been with only 3 others before me, and that he doesn't talk to any exes. None of this would have mattered to me if he'd been upfront in the beginning. But because he lied and was using the whole "I don't talk to girls, you can't talk to guys" to keep me from having male friends, I was pretty upset. A few weeks after that, I told him I was going to the movies with a female friend for her birthday. I told him the movie was at 7:00 and I'd be back before midnight. We wouldn't be drinking, partying, anything like that. Well, at about 9:30, I start getting horrible texts. I'm lying. I better enjoy the dick I'm getting because I'm never getting his again, and that he doesn't want to see me when I get home. I was crushed. It was the first time I'd seen any friends since we started dating, and she had never met him. But she saw what he was sending me. I ignored him and ended up getting home at 11 p.m. The house was trashed and he was up waiting for me. When I asked what the hell he was talking about, he slammed the door in my face. Literally. It hit me really hard in the nose and screamed, "Fuck off." I slept on the couch. The next day, he left without saying a word to me for a softball game he'd been planning with his friends. I was still pissed. So I called him as soon as I woke up. By the way, he was out of state and would be sleeping in a motel room with multiple single girls divided by guys for the next 5 days. And I told him, "He's in, I'm done." He was absolutely desperate over the phone for me to give him another chance. But I hung up. I packed everything I owned and tried to leave. But he showed up right before I could, and was very sincere about getting help. The next day, he stayed out until 5:00 a.m. at a strip club and came back without his promise ring on. He said he'd put it in his pocket so he wouldn't lose it. But he smelled strange and was acting strange. And I just know that he cheated. He vehemently denied it, saying I was insane for accusing him and that we should just break up if I wasn't going to trust him. I said okay and started packing again. Then he said he'd never said any of that. After the fight earlier, he said he'd go to therapy, stop punching holes in the walls, pay more attention to me, and even let me go to clubs again, and resume contact with my male friends. Well, he did start therapy. He went for 3 months, and nothing changed. He continued to punch and break things, scream at me, tell me everything was my fault, and that he couldn't stand me. He turned to drinking, and when he'd get violent and drunk, he said I was the reason he was forced to drink because I was causing him so many issues. Well, things got better than they got worse. They were up and down for a while, but we had a good period of about 4 years. There were several large fights over the years. Here are a few that stand out. The day my favorite aunt died, I was with her at the hospital. I drove a shitty vehicle there that was known for breaking down. After she passed, I was a mess. I told him I was leaving and would be back soon. We lived only a few minutes down the street. But my car broke down, and I was about 15 minutes late. I got home and he was furious. Said I was cheating on him, and that was why I was late. Screamed that I was a cheater, and the landlord, who was our neighbor, heard the whole thing. He always hated me after that. No apology after he calmed down. Instead, it was my fault for causing him to worry. I was feeling depressed about the amount of PRN he watched, versus how often he was interested in me. We used to have a ton of segs. We had 6 different FFM threesomes with multiple girls he chooses. And I tried everything to satisfy his kinks. But then I just stopped being enough. Guys, I have zero self-esteem at this point, and I'm just dreading waking up every single morning. One day, after a month of no sex, he locks himself in the bathroom, and I can hear him in there. I get so sick to my stomach and have an anxiety attack. I'm a very in shape, busty girl. I'm in gymnastics, and I've always been told I'm generally attractive. So it's not a weight issue or anything. I suspect PRN addiction. I'm hyperventilating on the floor when he comes out and he's sweet for a moment, asking what's wrong and to please talk to him. Well, I trusted him and I shouldn't have. I told him in the most calm voice I could that it makes me feel sad when he chooses PRN over me. That we've had segs 4 times in 3 months, and I wish I had more from him. He completely lost it. He grabbed my shoulders so hard his nails dug in. He shook me and screamed that he doesn't even watch PRN. That he is so whipped by a stupid, that his life is, because of me. I have always been very sensitive and I cry at the drop of a hat. I know that makes him feel like I'm trying to manipulate him. But even if I lock myself in the bathroom to cry in private, it's still my fault, and I'm using it to control him. I don't have anywhere to go, and I cannot not cry sometimes. Is there something I could have done to show him I just need to cry sometimes? That brings us to now. Most of the year was good. But the past few months he's been screaming a lot more. He's told me that I am a horrible person for trying to leave him years ago, and that I don't deserve him, and will never find another guy who'd put up with me. He always denies things and tries to make me sound crazy. So this time I recorded it. Later, when he was more calm, I played it for him, and he accused me of inviting guys over to pretend to be him, so I could get him in trouble. What the? He's done much more. He's gone through every file on my computer, and set the only dirty one he could find as my background to humiliate me, because he knew his family was coming over. He wanted them to see the filthy I look at. Remember earlier how I said he has a PRN addiction? Yeah. He's at a level of hypocrisy that I just can't understand. I know this is incredibly toxic, and I am so sick of feeling suicidal. I just wanted to know one thing. Am I the one who is abusive? I know I didn't give very many examples of things I've done. And maybe if he posted his side, you'd agree with him. But what about my trying to leave? Was that a horrible act of betrayal? Because he is convinced it's worse than cheating, and says he is abused, and is a victim. I am just so confused and feel constantly devastated and lonely. I have no one if I lose him. Frown. Please send help. Edit 1. I guess it doesn't really make sense for me to ask if I'm being abusive, since this is from my point of view, and for all you know I could just leave what I do out, so I don't really know what I'm asking. I guess I just want to see what others think. I feel like I'm crazy. Edit 2. He just texted me that he saw my post and is coming home. Edit 3. I'm somewhere safe now. I'll post a full update as soon as this post dies down because the one I posted got removed. Thank you all so much. Update. I'm sorry for leaving you guys hanging yesterday. I was trying to be vague in the last post because I know my boyfriend had mentioned in passing that he kept an eye on this sub in case I ever posted. But I didn't realize he meant that he checked it every single break. He was able to find it anyway. So now it doesn't matter. I'm okay. Just to get that out of the way. First of all, wow. You guys. Thank you so much. I haven't read all the comments yet because I had no idea this would get so big. But thank you. You are all such wonderful people. To everyone who offered me a place to stay, or a ride. I can't thank you enough. Just knowing that there are people out there who would help a complete stranger is very touching. And I wish I could tell you how much I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you. To those of you saying I'm abusive for posting this. Hell. I didn't mean it that way. But maybe I didn't plan for or want him to see it. But I can see what you mean. Anyway. Last night was probably the biggest night of my life. So bear with me if it starts getting too long. I've been in therapy for the last 3 years. And one of the things my therapist had me do was get a backpack ready with everything I might need in an emergency. Within 2 minutes of receiving his text yesterday and posting the edit, I grabbed that backpack and was planning on just walking. So at least I wasn't home. I don't have a car. I was thinking about just going through my contacts and talking to whoever I could. But that didn't work out. Josh was outside parked down the street. He was trying to catch me leaving. So when he sent the text that said, "Saw your post. I'm coming home." He was already home. He was waiting. I just stood there because I didn't know what to do. I thought he was going to be furious. But he ran up to me with a completely different react than I expected. He was crying. Like bawling his eyes out. I still felt like I was waiting for him to get mad or scream at me or something. But he just hugged me really tight and said he's so sorry. He said he had no idea I felt that way and that he knows he has jealousy issues and a temper and asked if we could talk about it inside. He begged me to come in and said he couldn't lose me and he loves me. I didn't know what to do. I just followed him in. He took my backpack from me and when he looked at it, he just broke down. He asked if I was really leaving him. Why I didn't tell him things were his bad. Why I never talked to him. I told him I can't talk to him. Every time I have ever decided to trust him and open up about even the tiniest thing that's bothered me. Like him asking for other girls' numbers in front of me, or him hanging up on me constantly. He always loses his, and starts screaming at the top of his lungs while I just sit there as quiet as possible and apologize. And then this is where he changed. At this point, he was no longer acting like he was sorry. He'd switched to your full of, "I treat you like a goddamn angel and get walked all over in return." He said he should never have to apologize to me. I was very upset. So I played one of the fights I recorded. And I'm so glad I kept those after he told me to delete them. Even in the first 3 minutes of it, you can tell I was being calm. The first thing I say is, "Baby, I didn't mean to say anything was wrong with us. I just wanted to know why you don't want me to apply at place. I could use my degree. I just want to help make money." He immediately starts yelling, "You'll cheat on me and find someone better. Off. Go find some guy to, at place. I don't give a, you'll come crawling back to me. No one else would put up with you. You?" This fight was pretty recent. But he only listened to a few seconds of it. I know some people who commented on the last post suggested that maybe I really am screaming back at him. Someone said something about slapping him. Too. Neither of us have ever slapped the other. Though. And I understand that may be something to consider. But I know that I don't yell. I have a hard time standing up for myself, and I hate confrontation. Especially with him. I always just want to make the fights better. I know I need to work on that, and I've brought it up in therapy before. But I just felt like adding that. He got up and said, "Fuck off with that shit." He was definitely not apologetic and sweet anymore. So I was just quiet. He said he's done with this, and I have no right to record him. And then he ripped the phone out of my hand. He said more stuff. But I can't remember everything. I asked what he was doing. But he just glared at me, and then he stomped outside with it. And then threw it as hard as he could. I don't know why. But that just broke my heart so much. He's broken things of mine before. But I had been planning on calling a friend or my brother. And I didn't know any of their numbers. I asked him what he did with it. But he wouldn't answer. He slammed the door so hard when he came in that I flinched. Then he bumped into me really roughly and went straight to his computer, where he put his headphones on and turned up his music really loud. He always put his headphones on in a certain way when he's mad, 'cause then he can't hear me. He started playing a game, and he was literally fuming. I stood in the door and he looked up at me, and the way he looked at me was awful. I could feel that he absolutely hated me. And what's sad is that wasn't even the first time he's looked at me that way. I think I was kind of in shock. I always feel that way when he's mad. He kept playing games. So, I went out to look for my phone, which I found parts of shattered on the street. But I never found the battery, and I don't think it was usable. When I went back in, I was shaking frown. We talked it out later. I think everything is going to be okay. Just kidding. I don't know why. But I just felt so done. I grabbed his phone off the counter and ran outside. I knew he used to text my brother, and he had the number of the friend I watched a movie with a while back, to make sure I was where I said I was. So, I used his to call them. My brother answered on the second ring and I didn't know what to say. So, I just started pouring my heart out. I told him I'm sorry we haven't talked in so long. But that I'm really scared and have nowhere to go. Guys. This hurt more than anything my boyfriend has ever said or done. And I'm still so surprised that he would have this reaction after so long. I can't remember the beginning. But the last thing he said was, "You deserve everything that's happening to you." And hung up. He hates me. He really thinks I deserve to stay with Josh because I'm attracted to girls. At the time, I just thought, fuck him. And I called my friend, who I'll call a well. She didn't answer at first. But then she called right back. Thank you all so much for suggesting that I call her, because she was so happy to hear from me. And I told her everything that happened. She said she was 30 minutes away, and she would come with her husband. I didn't even know she had gotten married. Frown. So, I went back in, and oh my god. That was a horrible 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do. I was so worried he'd come out because I didn't want to see him. I'm a bad liar, and he'd know something was up. I didn't want him to notice my stuff all packed up. So, I just put all my cords divided by controllers, divided by clo, and small things I couldn't live without in a box. But left the big stuff. I got there really fast, and her husband, who is such a nice guy, helped me load my desk, divided by chair and computer in their truck. This is the part I'm not feeling so great about right now. I left without saying a word to Josh. I could still hear him playing games in the other room. And the only thing I wanted in the entire world was for him to hug me and tell me it was okay. And while my heart really hurts today, I can't even see through the tears to type this out. I know how he sounded. But I really loved him so much. And it feels like I ripped my own limb off when I think about his face and smile and everything that was good. I feel like there's a huge hole in my chest. But when I play these fights, I recorded, and think about my future, and this amazing friend who came and saved me, and everything I can do with my life. I feel so happy. I thought I needed Josh. But man, it's so amazing feeling like I don't. I have to get a new phone though. Frown. Thank you all so much. You are all amazing people. I received so many thoughtful messages, and I can't tell you how thankful I am that I ended up posting here. I'm with A now, and she lives in a house I've never been to. So I'm pretty sure Josh won't find it. And she invited another girl I haven't seen in years to go to a concert on Friday night. And I am so excited. We had strawberry daiquiris and watched stupid horror movies all night. And her husband is making waffles right now. Guys. I'm free. I'm so happy. I'm free? You. Joshua Ida DCK. Edit. Something I forgot to add is that A's husband, who is a software developer, noticed something on my computer when I turned it back on at their house to show them the post. It's called Sniper Spy. And that is how Josh knew about my post. I thought he'd just been super stalking. But nope. He installed a spy app on my PC. I know it shouldn't take a software developer to notice an icon on my desktop. But I never saw it before. So I think it must have popped back up when I restarted my computer. Just a warning to those out there who value their privacy. I didn't realize it was possible to spy on someone like that.